discussions. The session today we focus on is how to ensure a just and inclusive energy transition. For today's sessions, we have 4 experts in the field about strategies and policies that promote a fair and equitable transition to solar energy that upholds labor rights, distributive justice, and procedural justice that leave no one behind. Without further delay, we will have our presenters to present for 15 minutes. But before that, I would like to remind you that we have the chat box function so that you can introduce yourself. And we have the Q&A text box so that you can leave your questions for our speakers along their presentations. And at the end of the, after all the presentations, we will have discussions and also Q&A sessions. So without further delay, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Professor Jusan Asuka. Professor Asuka is for Northeast Asian Studies at Tohoku University in Japan. His primary areas of interest are energy policy and environmental policy, and also international cooperation. His recent specific interests are to promote the green recovery and energy transition, which Japan is lagging behind other countries. So, Professor Asuka, you have 15 minutes and the floor is yours.
My name is Jose Asuka, working for Tohoku University in Japan. Tohoku University is located northeast part of Japan and one of the national university in Japan. So I'm going to talk about the situation in Japan, and then because I'm Japanese, and discuss about what is the issue in Japan in terms of climate change, so-called green new, and how to introduce more renewable energy and how to make the transition more good to the people to talk. Let me start talking about the situation in Japan on coal-fired power plant. Second slide, please. So this is a ranking EU think tank on how which country is more progressive or which country is more lagging behind in terms of coal-fired power phasing out. And out of 6 countries, which is in ED or in EU 28, Japan is the worst in terms of fired power plant phase out. So that means in coal-fired plants, Japanese company or Japanese government is not behaving very well. Second slide. And current administration, Japanese government, and planning to have, for example, coal-fired plant generation in 2030, 19%. Then nuclear power plant generation is about 20%. That's the kind of scenario made by current administration, which means we still keep coal-fired power plant in 2030 and nuclear power plant in 2030. As an alternative, my research group proposed the energy mix phase out nuclear power and coal-fired power plant in 2030. And this is our energy mix scenario. And that means we introduce more renewable energy and more energy efficiency action in 2030 compared to governmental plan. Second, and with no nuclear and with no coal-fired plant in 2030. Next slide, please. And this is, again, the picture, how much we can gain, how much we can reduce by energy efficiency increase, and how much we can reduce CO2 emission by introducing renewable energies. Renewables is green color, and blue color is energy efficiency. So almost 90% can be reduced in 2050 by renewable energy and energy efficiency. Another point here is by only using existing technology, we can reduce almost 90%. So no innovative, no fancy high-tech technology is needed if we really introduce current existing technology. Second, next slide, please. Okay, this is our collection, how much investment we need in each sectors. Each sector means, for example, power generation or industry or household or something like the building or something like that. So calculated how much investment and how much energy cost we can reduce in each sector. And also we calculated how much new employment will be created in each sectors and how much we use energy cost in each sectors. This is the calculation we did to make more economic sense and make our proposal more convincing. Next slide, please. And this is the how much we can reduce the utility expenses, energy cost, and how much investment we need for make this happen. So benefit is much bigger than cost. That means our proposal, our green recovery or our green new deal plan is quite economically rational. Please. So let me indicate again the positive impact of green recovery strategy in Japan. Investment accumulated total to 202 trillion yen by 2030, and public sector is one three-fourths, and public money would be fourth. That is our assumption. And economic effect is 205 trillion Japanese yen by 2030 in GDP increase. And job creation is 25.44 million jobs year by 2030. That means 2.54 million jobs for 10 years. Energy cost reduction is 308 trillion Japanese yen by 2030. That is the result of our calculation. Next, please. And again, the additional positive impact by our strategy, our alternative to current and governmental energy plans. Fossil fuel import reduction would be 51.7 trillion Japanese yen. And CO2 emission is 55% reduction from 1990 level. Current administration's current administration reduction target is 40% compared to 1990. So our proposal is to 15% bigger, more ambitious than current administration's current governmental NDC or CO2 emission reduction target. Also, we calculate how much air pollution, premature air pollution deaths will be avoided by our plans, and using some number calculated by some some academic papers on human health, and calculating 2,920 deaths will be prevented by our plan. Next, please. And when we talk about this kind of green energy transition or green recovery or green new deal, of course, many people think about how much job will lose by our energy transition plans. So the issue is like the 6 major CO2 emitting industry: power, iron, and steel, cement, chemicals, oil refining, and paper manufacturing, which account for more than 50% of CO2 emission in Japan. And our calculation is the people affected by our plan would be 150,000 people. And the GDP contribution is less than 1%. And for example, employment coal-power station is about 30,000, only 3,000 in Japan, because we are not we're just importing the coal, so we don't have any people in coal industry. Employment in the nuclear industry also very, very small, just 50,000. But in fact, employment of the renewable energy industry is estimated about 280,000, according to IRENA. So already job creation or job employment in renewable energy industry is quite big in Japan. And our in 2030, we will have more job in renewable energy and efficiency sectors. And then the people who lose job emitting industry is not that big. Also, in terms of GDP contribution, it's not that significant. That is our conclusion. Next slide, please. And this is the how the in nutshell how much we will create and how much we. This kind of calculation or number has not been developed in Japan so far. Academics didn't do this kind of we just started this kind of discussion in Japan about how much job will be created and how much job will be lost in terms of energy transition in 2030 or in 2050. Next slide, please. So this is conclusion. Current administration is not positive on energy transition compared to Biden administration in the US or other EU countries. That is reality in Japan. And many people in Japan still believe renewable is expensive, actually much more expensive than international standard. But still, it's getting cheaper and cheaper every day. And energy emission is acknowledged not very well. Many people think energy saving is not possible anymore. That is in Japan. And government and industry are doubling down on nuclear, hydrogen, ammonia, CCUS to keep existing facilities and business model. That is quite blunt expression, but I think that is true. And materials to discuss the energy transition is ready even in Japan, which means this kind of calculation, how much people will lose the job and how much people will be created in transition. So with this number, we can start the discussion more deeply from now on. That is our idea and our plan. And stakeholders such as labor union is very important. But so far, I'm sorry, but we couldn't speak so much very well with labor needed. And in principle, current biggest labor union in Japan is not so progressive on energy transition or Green New Deal. So that's a problem, and we hope we can fix this year or next year as soon as possible. And to change the narrative still needs time in Japan. Narrative means, for example, many people still believe nuclear is very cheap, renewable is very, very expensive. And then, as I said, the energy efficiency saving is not possible anymore. That kind of narrative still very, very prevailing and very, very strong in Japan. So what we can do as academics is to change this kind of narratives as much as possible and as soon as possible. That's the end of my presentation, and my happy answer to hear your comments. So yeah, I wrote a English paper on our Green New Deal proposal in book just 2 years. Last year we published this book. It's open access journal, so you can download for free. So if you are interested in Japanese Green New Deal plan, please look into this URL. Thank you very much again, and thank you for inviting me to this very important occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Asuka, and your presentation about the Japanese experience is very useful, and definitely, I think other cities or other places can learn from the experience. And moving on, we will now have Mr. Al Bernardi. He is the Executive Director of the Center for the Development of Indigenous and Technology in the Philippines. And Al been working in the development sector for more than 2 decades. And prior to this role at the Center for the Development of Indigenous Science and Technology, L has also served in different local and international NGOs. So L will have 15 minutes as well, and the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So as Chung said, I'm from the Philippine non-government organization. Okay, so what I'm going to share with you this afternoon is an experience. It's a story of one of our partner communities in the municipality of Dolores in Eastern Samar. That's a province in south of the Philippines. It's We implemented a project there, supported by Oxfam, and it's about just energy in small island communities. So there were two small island communities part of the project, but I'll be sharing the experience of one of them. So briefly, the project aimed to establish women-led social enterprise, effectively managing solar-powered renewable energy system into off-grid island communities, to respond to the socio-economic needs of women community members. We also integrated the project to contribute to enhancing the preparedness of the community against disaster. We are very prone to multi-hazards and multi-risks, opening up economic opportunities for women and lessen the burden of unpaid care work that they normally would be burdened with. So this is that island community. Barangay Hilabaan. Barangay is loosely translated, it means village. Barangay is the smallest political unit or political jurisdiction here in the Philippines. So it's composed of three smaller areas we call sitio, and each sitio, it's indicated here how many households benefited as project partners, no, from the renewable energy system installation. So we have 65 households here at the sort of like the village proper, 22 households, and 37 households correspondingly in the northern portion of the island community. So what are project interventions? So our NGO is really more of a social and environmental NGO, but our advocacy and our what we considered our strength is in community organizing. And so any project that we engage with, normally it is through the participation of the community. And in order to do that, we of course have to consult with the community. We have to strengthen and empower people in the community, and that all begins with organizing them. And in this case, the formation of association, exclusively women associations, and we call them self-help groups. This concept adopted from another agency of ours, Kinder Nat Health. And self-help groups are exclusive women groups who primarily do savings mobilization. But for this RE installation project, we course the groundwork and the preparation for the acceptance and actually the designing of what RE system to be installed in the island community through the association. And we see here some of the activities that we had to undertake before even introducing the renewable energy system would that will be installed in the community. So we had some capacity building for community members, definitely a lot of community consultations in order to come up with what is acceptable and what is appropriate for the community. And so a major part of the preparation was the involvement of the women group that I just talked about. It's the Hilaban Women's Association, and from start to finish, they were there. They were keeping in step with the process, from the survey of the energy needs, the gaps in the assessments. We the participatory beneficiary selection. There's more than 600 households in the island, but we could not. The project could not accommodate all 600 plus households, so there had to be beneficiary selection, and it's the women association that facilitated and greatly uh, coordinated the process for this selection. They were also involved in the GPS mapping of the beneficiaries, the formation and strengthening of the management structure that would eventually receive the renewable energy system, um, and would be managing and operating it. There's also the development operation and of course the final systems designing of the RE system for the community. And so with respect to the actual RE systems installation, it's really a community-led and community-managed process. Um, so what I have here are some pictures uh, to illustrate what went on. And basically, it's through the um, voluntarism that the system um, was conceptualized and then eventually installed. Of course, we had a service provider, Solar Solutions, which provided all the hardware and software and the materials that were used. And they had to transport all these solar panels and all the wirings and all other hardware from the mainland. It's about 40 minutes by a all outrigger boat to this island community of Hilabaan. And in these pictures, you see that it's the women groups who are really spearheading the preparation for the site where the solar panels will be installed. Here, we wanted to highlight the fact that for the RE facility, for the evacuation center, the women group, through their self-help group funds, allocated their own savings in order for the cost, no, for the cost of the installation of the RE facility for the evacuation center. It is sort of their counterpart for the project. It's not something that was required of them, but it was something that they wanted to do for their own community. Um, a major undertaking that the officers of the Women Association have had to do and still continue to do is the monthly monitoring of the RE system facilities in the far-flung areas, no, the two far-flung areas of the barangay or of the village where they have to go there by boat and inspect and monitor the facilities, the RE facilities that were installed in those areas. So that's part of the operation and maintenance that was turned over to them, being the organization that manages the RE facility now. So what were the results achieved and some of the accomplishments? Well, uh, very evident that it strengthened community participation. Here in the middle, you can see a picture of where solar street lights were installed, where the fisher folk have their fishing boat docking areas. So that gave them a sense of security that they can leave their boat there, and not having to sleep there just to guard their boats. So they've integrated the use of the RE facility into the system that they have for guarding the fishing boats of the fisher folk. Uh, and definitely they have also used renewable energy and integrated it into the disaster risk reduction and management plan that they have in the island, together with their barangay officials or the village officials. So through the project, 90 outrigger smaller bankas or boats were given solar lamps. There were six, so there are a total of 6 solar lights installed in the boat docking areas, and I think this is the most significant part where there's 124 households, five of them off grid, and then 119 connected to the microgrid, that that are now enjoying electricity brought about by the RE system that the project facilitated for the community. So some other notable outcomes. The women of this community have now increased financial literacy and financial management skills, not only from the trainings they have received, but also from the experience of managing the operation of their renewable energy system. So they are allocating funds for the protection, the maintenance, and the repairs, if necessary, of the system. And of course, they are also planning for additional capacity for some of the other not been connected to the system. They are charging minimal maintenance and maintenance fees for the installation and the connection of the households. And this has been, of course, agreed prior uh, to the installation of the RE system to the households. Another is that in June of last year, local leaders in the 36 other villages or barangays in the town of Dolores, they also committed budget allocation to integrate just energy transition advocacy in the form of renewable energy facilities in their respective village disaster risk reduction management plans. In the province, there is a municipal-wide RE initiative where majority of the local leaders are supporting the integration of renewable energy into the DRR management of their barangay or village jurisdiction. So it could serve as a model for other municipalities, other communities, um, and we that's certainly what we are doing. Trying to share the stories that we have of our partner communities. Um, and then also of note, although not directly uh, related to the benefit we get from renewable energy, lessen the unpaid care work of women in the island. The availability of electricity now has facilitated the redistribution of unpaid care work in the household. It has also brought about um, the development of a household level disaster risk reduction and management plan, where the plan continue to reflect and support the redistribution of care work responsibilities. Um, so with electricity now at night, the men folk uh, cannot argue anymore that they are tired, and it's hard for them to do some of the care work that women take care of at night because there is no light. So there is no flimsy excuse for not taking part also in the care work that women do in the household. So that is in a nutshell, very brief sharing of the experience of one of our partner island communities insofar as just energy transition and the use and the potential for transformation of a renewable energy system in this through the solar PV system that was installed uh, uh, through the project. So that is all for my part. Thank you very much for your
Uh, Thank you, Elton, for your presentation of No's experience. And right now, we will pass the presentation to Dr. Kevin Low. Kevin Low, Associate Professor of Geography and Acting Director of David C. Lam Institute for East-West Studies. And Dr. Low is also the Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Asian Energy Studies, an international peer-reviewed journal dedicated to interdisciplinary research on all aspects of energy studies in Asia. So, Dr. Low, please.
Thank you for the introductions, and very happy to be here for this important event. So actually, I'm very happy for my presentation to be after Al's experience from Philippines because I'm going to talk about similar project. Obviously, also different, I guess, governance mechanisms, but trying to achieve very similar objectives. So, well, just very briefly, some concepts here, conceptual background about just energy transitions. So, as we all know, the world is moving towards the low carbon transitions and renewable energies, whatnot. And then there is questions about social justice implication, and this kind of questions are becoming more and more importantly, especially since the idea of just transition has been sort of promoted by the UNFCCC, for example, during the Paris Agreement. And then to follow up, there's now a working group on just transition. So I would say the social justice aspect of our transition towards a climate-friendly environment is becoming more and more important. So it's quite clear now that this clean energy could be an opportunity to achieve social justice, but also if not done correctly, it could be a threat to social justice. And from a context of China, I would say both are happening. Depends on which uh, policy or which initiative you are looking at. There is various impact regarding social justice. But also because of the UNFCCC and because of all the other forces, we are seeing increasingly governments paying more attention to the concept of justice when they introduce energy transition policies. And in a rural context or developing countries context, there's also, I would say, the energy justice concept are also very closely aligned with the energy and development study, especially the realization that climate change benefits with development and can lead to what people call so something that can address both climate change and poverty alleviations at the same time. So we are talking now about integrating renewable energy more closely with sort of pro-poor poverty alleviations objectives. Now, in terms of China, the country is undergoing quite a rapid low carbon energy transition system. So there's two diagram, two pie chart here. The left-hand side is the energy consumption by sort of profile, the energy consumption by fuel types in 2012, and then the 2021, so 9 years later. The main message here is that the proportion of coal has declined, even the quantity has increased, but the proportion has declined. And the major sort of replacement of coal is natural gas and what is called here non-hydro renewables. So mostly solar panels and wind turbines. So those are the main new factors in energy production in China. So as I said before, there are some initiatives proposed by the government, central governments, to drive this energy transition process. And one of the very important policy that was introduced about 6 or 7 years ago now, 2017, was the photovoltaics for poverty alleviation policy. So this is, I consider it's quite an interesting policy and new policy because it's one of the first renewable energy policy in China that has a very clear, if not if putting the poverty alleviations, poverty fighting as the first objectives in renewable energy transition. So that also this policy is very large scale because in China we are talking when the central government initiate a policy is usually very ambitious. So this policy target 35,000 villagers with the aim of benefiting, if I remember correctly, 2 million households for the whole country. So as I said before, this policy, there are some policy in China that trying to help people using renewable energy to address their energy poverty issues, but this PVPA policy is a bit different in the sense that the central government envisioned this policy, envisioned renewable energy as a way of generating financial income, very secure and long-term financial income for the household. So the central government, when they developed this policy, they were promising the households that they will receive up to 25 years of income. In terms of the level of income, they promised about 3,000 RMB per year. So this project that I'm presenting, I'm talking about here, is an empirical study about the PVPA projects all around China. So what we did is we did a qualitative study. So we visit and interviewed people that have installed solar panels by the government. And then secondly, we have a national scale surveys to ask people about what's happening, how do they feel about these PVPA projects. So there are some photos I took from various field sites about the solar panels, solar stations that they installed. And one interesting thing is they like to install solar panels in areas that they consider as not usable, right? So because of central government's rule that solar panels or any kind of renewable energy facilities should not occupy farmland, and therefore it's usually one of the challenges to finding the right spot to put these solar panels. But because we are talking about energy justice, so one of this study is to look at these projects from a distributional justice perspective, which means that we're going to look at the material, the financial outcome of this kind of project. So we ask people, when we visit these villages, we ask people like how much money do they receive, and we also pay attention to who are eligible for these benefits. So we find out that the households that receive income from PV stations, the elderly residents, some with disability, some with illnesses, most of them live without their children. They either do not have children or their children have migrated as migrant workers to find better employment. So typically these elderly, because they only have farming as a livelihood sources, so their income was extremely low. And so if the by bringing in what the government promised, 3,000 RMB per year, is for them. It's about doubling their income annually. We also find that the PVPA project would benefit the villages as a whole, not just the poorest households. So because some of the financial benefits of the projects went into the village government, and the local governments can use this income for public goods, such as financing health insurance, or sometimes employing their local people to do some odd jobs. And we also find that some of these PV stations employ local people if their scale is large enough. They will employ local people for site maintenance and security, and therefore creating additional benefits to the local economies. So in general, our interviews find that most respondents feel that these projects have improved the environments and also their livelihood. But we also find some concerns. There's lots of complaint about the financial benefits generated by the projects, by the stations, are not large enough. Some of them have extremely low income, and they mentioned that all their money were spent on things such as expenses, and therefore they remain stuck in poverty. And regarding the surveys that we did, we have several findings. So first of all, we were a bit concerned about how much money that the household had to pay for these kind of projects, because it varies a lot in China. Some of these projects, the governments pay for it. Some other projects is like a charity, so the station aided by the enterprises. But some other cases, the local people have to pay for it. So we did a survey about 1,000 people, and we find out that a huge range from $0 to 50,000 RMB, with an average about $10,000, which is quite substantial because we are talking about poor households and poor villages. Now, regarding how much money they receive from these projects, again, there's a huge range from $500 to 15K RMB per year, with an average about $4,000, which is slightly higher than the central government's target. And also, there's most people will respond that the PV station has created job opportunities, which they consider as quite positive. And overall, over 50% of them were satisfied outcome. Just quickly talk about the second dimensions of justice, which is the procedural justice, because one of the main issue when you talk about Chinese project is that it's very top down. There's very limited public engagement. So we're interested about to what extent the local people were consulted by these kind of projects. So I think the result is, to summarize the result, I would public engagement. So on the one hand, as you can see the diagram here, which trace out the processes of a sort of typical PVPA project, there were several ways the local people were consulted. So they were informed by sort of village heads about these kind of opportunities, and they can either vote directly, or sometimes if the village are really big, they vote whether the village go ahead with these projects or not. So there's some kind of public consultations, but we do notice significant limitations. Basically, the local villages can only make one decision, which is whether to go ahead with this project or not. Regarding other issues such as the size of the PV, how the money distributed, what about the maintenance, and all the other issues, there is no room for consultations, and those county governments and the local officials would justify this kind of lack of consultations by saying that this kind of project were too technical for local people to understand, and therefore it's not suitable for consultations. Again, that's for the interviews, and for the questionnaire surveys at the national level, what we find out was, on average, villagers were consulted about 1.6 times, and about slightly less than half of them were consulted about eligibility, whether they can participate in the project, and then about 48% were consulted about distribution of benefits, and then the goes down and down and down. So in general, the sense is that the people were consulted, but not very well. All right. So in conclusions, I would say, geography is all about context. So we pay a lot of attention about how political context in China, which is a very strong central government, very top down, is driving just energy transitions. So for the PVP, it's very important because the central government has lots of resources, or even though in this case, the central government did not contribute much resources, but the power to direct the society to achieve certain goals. And also, importantly, is the reason why place such a strong focus on social justice is because it's considered by Xi Jinping as a key way to achieve his vision of poverty-free by 2020. So it's really because of Xi Jinping's idea of sort of seeing photovoltaics developments as a way of providing financial resources to poor people, that these sort of converted a typical renewable energy policy into a social justice policies. Okay, so I think I will just stop here for brief introductions. And lastly, I just want to take 1 minute of your time to promote my journals. This is Journal of Asian Energy Studies. It's founded in 2017, dedicated, as the host explained already, all kind of interdisciplinary research on energy studies in China. This journal is indexed in Scopus, so it's another quite well-known international database. But most importantly, what's special about this journal is it's non-commercial, and then we take a diamond open access. Means that not only is open access, but it's also completely free for authors to publish their work. So if you are interested in this journal, please have a look. Just Google Journal of Asian Energy Studies. It will take you to the website. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Low, for your presentation about the experience in China. And also apologies that eventually Mr. Eric Roda is not able to join us at today's event because of some technical issues. But we will try to engage him in the future events. But in the meantime, let's start the Q&A sessions because we already received a few questions from the audience. The first question is addressed to Professor Asuka. So the audience is interested in the impacts of the green recovery strategy on poor and low socio-economic of population in Japan. So what are the impacts of them, and also how the green recovery strategy supports the improvements of social and economic well-being of the low socio-economic parts of the Japanese society. Professor Asuka, please.
Thank you very much. This is our plan is just a proposal, so not yet implemented. So we cannot see what will happen. Also, we are talking about 2030. So we can't say definitely at this moment what would be the exact impact on like poor the people in not so rich. But at the same time, we are proposing the subsidy plan for who cannot afford to pay the energy efficiency electric appliance or air conditioner, for example, or the something like that. So we think it's very important to have separate policy to provide like a incentive tax deduction or kind of subsidy by the government to poor people. I think that is what energy administration in the United States is doing at this moment. So I think that kind of policy, additional to, is very, very important. I hope answer your question. Okay.
Professor Asuka, and
Yes.
just a remark that to repeat, the question is from one of the audience.
Yes.
And also, I would like to have one question for Professor Suka as well. That is about your experience with the engagement with the local trade unions. So could you talk a little bit more about that? For example, it seems to me that the labor unions in Japan is not so welcomed about the green recovery, mainly because of that they think that the renewable energy is still very expensive. So, why is that? Why do they think that it is still expensive? And also, is there anything that you think we can be doing to help them change their mind?
Okay, so two things. The reason labor union is not so positive on energy transition is like the labor union of the power industry, labor union of steel industry, labor union of car industry. They are quite powerful in Japan. So those industries are not so positive or not progressive so much enough to energy transition. That's why in general, in overall, the labor union in Japan is not so positive on energy transition. And the renewable energy is getting very cheap, even in Japan, but still comparing with international price, it's expensive because we import, for example, solar panel from China or other countries. Also, the construction cost of constructing the for those additional cost is a bit expensive. Also, land is very expensive in Japan. So overall, the price of renewable energy is maybe 150% or expensive than compared to the thing in China or in the United States. But again, I'm saying that it's increasing as well in Japan, and I hope the gap between renewable energy and coal-fired plant or nuclear power is getting bigger and bigger in Japan, even in Japan. Yes.
Thank you, Professor Asuka.
Okay.
And so here are some questions for L. One is that about your experience in the Filipino community for your project. It would be good to know how did you identify the community that you would like to support from your project, and also what's the response or from the community at the beginning? Do they welcome the project? Did they have any concerns, etc.?
Um, well, when we go into a partnership with uh, we have certain criteria. Our organization normally looks at the poverty incidence in an area. We are married with fisher folk, with the fisheries sector, so our partner communities are most likely going to be coastal communities. And then for we can facilitate the installation of an RE system in one of our partner communities or not. Usually, we are very reliant. We are very dependent on our partnership with our funders, with our funding agency. Like in this case, where it was Oxfam who generously for the installation of the RE system in Barangay Hilabaan. Uh, I didn't catch your second question.
For the project you mentioned, from the beginning, what's the response from the community? Did they welcome at the beginning, or did they have any concerns at that moment?
Dr. Law also spoke about just energy transition and different aspects or elements of energy justice. You know, so he talked about the distributional justice, procedural justice. There is also the restorative justice, and if we try to run down the five aspects from Professor, the cosmopolitanism and the recognition aspect of energy justice. But in our communities, it's very simple. For them, it's access. So it's not it's inclusion by way of access, because they are not connected to the main grid of the electricity, because they are island communities. There's still a, according to government statistics, it's maybe around to 15% of households in the country that is not yet electrified. Uh, yeah, and but most of these would be in the islands. We are an archipelago, so you might have heard that we are often referred to as the country or the archipelago with 7,100 islands, and that depends on whether you're counting the islands during low tide or high tide. But in any case, community acceptance is not so much. It's not very challenging, in the sense that what they primarily desire is electricity. Of course, there is also the issue of affordability. There is the issue of reliability. But for a lot of island communities no, who have not known, who have not been electrified since people there were born. So it's really just a matter of access to begin with. And for a renewable energy system like solar PV, it's not so hard to try to sell the technology to them. But of course, it's through the community consultation that we try to present what are all the other alternatives that they can avail of. But usually, I mean, like, if you try to go micro hydro, it's not always, you will not always find a source for the water. So it's usually solar PV, the most feasible, and it's the most simple technology that's available for them.
Thank you, Al. And there is also one question for you from the audience. Also, again, from Shamil Yewu Shami. So the question is, what do you think about the idea of integration between solar energy and hydrogen energy? And so, is it a policy of the Filipinos authorities? Are they concerning?
Law on renewable energy sources. There is a P, whether one is considered or is one is preferred over another. So it is usually up to those who will avail, or communities who will try to install an RE system, to select or to choose, and it's up to them to try to learn about the advantages and disadvantages. Um, I've already mentioned about the advantage of solar PV as an RE system, being simple technology. It is widely available here, even though, as same with Professor Jusen said, as with Japan, we also import the solar panels from out from, I think, mainly from China as well. But they are widely available, and they are becoming more and more affordable also through the years. So that is becoming kind of like the RE system of choice for a lot of people, communities, no, as a communal RE system. Um, with regard to hydrogen energy, it the technology is not very popular here locally. Um, well, I think also because it's very energy intensive, so it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation where you need the electricity to be able to produce the electricity uh, from hydrogen. So the process of electrolysis is very energy intensive, and energy electricity in particular is very expensive here in the Philippines. I think it's the highest among Southeast Asian nations. So we don't even kind of really hear about hydrogen energy um, being utilized here in the Philippines.
Thank you, L. And there are also some questions for Dr. Low. And the first question from our colleague Kevin Lee. And so the question is about the PVPA. So is the PVPA self-sufficient in the long run? And also is there a timeline on implementation?
Oh, okay. Thank you for the questions. So, first of all, the timeline, I would say is almost finished implementation. So it started in 20, well, it actually first started in 2013 as a bottom-up experimentation. So one particular county did it. And then somehow the central government think it's a good idea. So it was introduced nationally in 2017. And then by around 2019 there was a policy revisions, and then it keep going. So I would say now it's all so all 35,000 villages would have their PV installed. Some would say some would have a different model. So like the photos I show you are village scale, so about 500 kilowatt systems, not that big. But sometimes, especially in Western China where there's lots of space, there could be a giant utility scale PV stations that help like 100 villages. So not just one village has their own PV station. So there's different models. Now, regarding sustainability, so if you're talking about financial sustainability, there was some concern during the first batch of implementations, because the first batch of implementations, the local government did not want to contribute lots of resources, so they either asked the businesses to donate equipment, or they asked the villagers to pay, uh, which create problem for both. Business didn't want to be forced to donate, and then the villagers didn't really have lots of money. So by around 2019, the central government came out and say, no, the local government must pay for these power stations. So now the local government pay for it, and the benefits mainly received by uh, the villages. So that's a sustainable model.
Dr. Low, and I would like to follow up a bit about your mention about the donation from the business sector. So actually in those projects in China, what is the role of the business sector, and do they always follow the initiatives from the central government and then they react, or what is the cooperation or collaboration between the government and the business sector?
Okay, yeah, thanks for the questions. Yeah, so donation is not sure if it's a good word to describe the situation, because there's generous donations, obviously. So some businesses want to donate, but those cases are rare. Other way of donation really is the government can sort of force businesses, for example, saying that if you want to if you want have the permissions to develop solar panels projects here, you have to make certain percentage of the project as a poverty alleviation project. Right? So meaning that let's say they have a massive 1 megawatt system, they have to classify 200 kilowatt system all of them as pro-poor, so they do not earn profit from it. The money goes to the villages. So that's as donation, but it's more like I don't know what to say. It's a policy approach of making the businesses to this kind of social justice issues. So, but that's the reality. If you do business in China, right, you know that's the rule, right? Common prosperity. Right? That's what you expect.
Thank you, Dr. Low. And there is an additional question to L. That is about will the energy model be sufficient if the local community starts to expand in the future?
I'm not sure what you mean exactly by using the phase end model. But yeah, since it's an RE system using solar PV, so expansion would require the additional installation of solar PV solar panels in order to accommodate some of the other households who have not been electrified or solarized. Yeah, but in terms of, I don't know if you're talking about the whole management of the RE system. Um, that is something that the community will have to decide whether the management structure that they have now will still be the one managing additional capacities, or it can be another. Um, I would imagine it could be another group, so that also the benefit running the RE system as a is redounds to more people in the community. I don't know if I've answered your question, but if you can clarify what exactly you mean by NLP model, I would highly
Yeah,
appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep, that's good. Thanks, L. And there are two questions for all the speakers. One is from Miko Wong, and then another one is from Kevin. So the first question is about what steps can be taken to address the historical and systematic inequalities that may persist during the transition, and how they can be rectified. This is the first question. And the second question is from Kevin. I can imagine the framework of just transition is still evolving and include largely labor rights. However, women's and indigenous voices are also important. How could we envision a global framework that accommodates the different needs of vulnerable groups in energy transition? So let's see if anyone at first.
So yeah, I have a question about the first. It is about you
Uh,
said
our-
historical justice.
right.
Historical justice. Okay. Also, it's kind of international justice, right? Or generation justice between different generations. Which I'm not sure what the what the question was. Could you repeat?
What steps can be taken to address the historical injustices and systemic inequalities that may persist during the transition? The participant did not specify which kind of injustice, whether it is intergenerational or inter country, but maybe you can just take the context in your country and then address this question.
Okay, again, that is very difficult question. Uh, it's true that we should not leave anybody behind, but practically speaking, it's not possible. So that means we have to provide some subsidy or some financial support to the people who job, for example. Also, in terms of historical responsibility, injustice, again, we have to provide some the people who suffered in the past to some money to those kind of people. And some may say it's compensation, or some may say it's kind of reparation. But actually, it's not that easy. But as I said, at least in Japan or in the state, there's a kind of system which government provide more money to the people who had suffered long, like people, indigenous people or something like that. So I think that kind of special treatment for those people who suffered most and who suffered should be given some special treatment by the government. I hope I answered the question to some extent.
Professor Suka.
Yes.
So, yeah, L or Dr. Low, do you have any response regarding the historical injustice and systematic inequalities, or maybe also about how we can address the issues other than labor rights?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I mean, because you talk about steps, I mean, there's hundreds of steps. So I'll talk about the first step, the most important step, the starting one. The starting one is recognition of justice, because what I find out is most sufficient understanding about the injustices that's created by an energy transition, whether it's labor related or could be energy consumption related in China. I'll give you one example. Right? So there's lots of mines that's being closed by the government, not just for climate change reasons, for other reasons as well. For example, capacity reduction. The local or the central governments would think that this is a just transition because they would say that all the allocated, they were protected, they were transferred to other, given retirement benefits, etc., etc. But they neglect or they do not recognize there is a significant proportions of workers that work for private enterprises. So those are the small enterprises that's typically owned by farmers, and they employ farmers, so they employ migrant workers. So they did not receive any compensations. They did not receive any help from the local governments because the local government did not really consider those rural population as part of their responsibilities. So it is really without these kind of recognitions that the energy transition is producing injustice, it's really hard to address this kind of problem. So that means one of our job really as academics is to highlight these issues, to give recognitions or play the recognition of politics to bring awareness to these kind of social injustice issues that bring on by just transitions. Yeah, I will stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Low. And see if L or Professor Suka, do you want to jump in?
Yes. Let me provide some information about what has happened in Japan 60 years ago. In 60 years ago, there's another energy transition in Japan, which is from coal to oil. And used to be, we had a lot of coal in Japan, but 60 years ago, government decided to phase out all coal to change to oil. That was 60 years ago. And to make it happen, government spent a lot of money for subsidy compensation, some support creations of acceptance, something like that, job training. And in total, according to some study, the government spent 4 trillion yen at that time. And 4 trillion 60 years ago is 2 times bigger than annual budget of the government. And the money came from the tax to import oil from abroad. Anyway, that kind of thing happened in Japan 60 years ago. And they are making the same kind of things now in Japan. But as a previous professor told us, we don't have that kind of recognition yet and we are not yet sure or serious about energy transition and how important, how difficult it would be. And so that kind of understanding is very, very important. And as academics, we have to make more effort to get that kind of idea across to Japan or in the world. I stop it.
Professor Suka, El, do you want to jump in for these questions?
Dr. Law's point that I think the continuation of the process would be after the the, the, the academics researchers have provided us with the science and the evidence-based researches and findings. Then it's up to organizations, community-based organizations, non-government organizations. It's up to us to kind of like advocate and lobby for what we think would be the framework that we could use. Although I'm highly suspicious that we could come up with a global framework like what Mr. Kevin Lee was alluding to. But to his point and to his question, um, I think there would be aspects or elements of the framework that we can all adopt universally, somewhat akin to the five pillars of the energy justice um, um, tenet or principles. But then here in the Philippines, there is a local movement among advocates to try and come up with a framework for just energy transition, considering all these aspects: distributional, procedural, restorative recognition, and cosmopolitanism. But I think, yeah, it would really have to start also from the ground up because there are very site-specific and culturally specific uh, nuances to how uh, people and even the legal structures, for example, would interpret what would be a just energy transition. Um, So I think we all have a part to play, but yeah, in the Philippines, some of the local actors, civil society organizations have started doing the rounds of conducting fora and workshops uh, to try and share the information and the ideas to as many groups as possible. Um, it's not the labor groups that Mr. Lee he pointed out also, but for example, here in the Philippines, our electric power industry is really controlled by oligarchs. So, and they have started to shift also to renewable energy sector. So, unless there is a big push, for example, from local civil society, then I think the injustices will just continue even with what we would see as an energy transition.
Thanks, Elt, and thanks everyone's contribution to this discussion. It comes to the end of this panel discussions, and thanks again to all the speakers. And we have come across with the experience in Philippines, in also in Japan, to learn about how to make sure a just and inclusive energy transition. And for another speaker, Mr. Eric Broda, who could not join us today, he will be presenting tomorrow in the session about COP28. And also, that session will be at 3:30 to 5 p.m. Hong Kong time. And Eric is the IAO technical specialist on green jobs, climate action, and resilience transition in the Asia Pacific region. So if you are interested in learning about Eric's experience and insights, please to join us for the tomorrow sessions. And thanks again for our speakers for today's presentation, and also thanks all the audience for your participation. And it comes to the end of this session, and we will see you again tomorrow. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.